Jumping back into this, we're now going to look at the rise of labor unions. We saw how businesses became great, but the question is, who makes you is more important to your company? Is it the person behind the scenes, or is it the worker at its thing? Now, labor unions are dedicated saying it's the worker. Without the worker, there would be no money. And you can see how that works. So we're going to see how labor unions rose and then how ultimately they fell at this time. All right. Now, looking at this is a good idea of a labor union, and I love this quote. He's one of my favorite coaches of all time. Coach K, Coach Mike Krzyzewski of Duke Blue Devils, tells his players, if you play like just an open hand, 5 fingers that are loosely connected by your hand, there's plenty of spaces. You're going to get beat in the spaces. But if you wrap up like a fist, right, you're playing united, you have each other's back, you are common in the cause. And so what we have here in this picture is we have an agrarian, a farmer union, correct? And they are out to control the industries, and they said that by uniting together with one big common voice, they can't be ignored. That's a union, okay? And so now we're going to see the different types of unions and things that they did. The first union to come into our country was called the Knights of Labor. There was a much longer name. We're going to go with Knights of Labor, okay? Now, the Knights of Labor are no longer around. Why? The Knights of Labor included a various number of people. They had women, they had illegal immigrants, they had immigrants themselves, they had African Americans, and so the problem with that is everyone wanted something else. If you have brothers or sisters and mom says, you know what, everyone pick where we're going to go eat, there's going to be a multitude of places where you want to go. Different groups of people have different wants and needs. And so by the Knights of Labor being too broad and letting everybody in, nothing got accomplished. And what hurt them was the inclusion of unskilled labor. Now, I put this picture here because these 3 girls are not professional painters. Okay, we can see that. But any ignoramus, any person can grab a roller, a paint brush, and paint something. Correct? And so the idea was unskilled labor is just going to hurt you. So unskilled labor is any job that does not require you to have some type of college, have some type of knowledge. It's just basically you can show up and do the job even if you don't understand the language. And that's unskilled labor, all right? So Knights of Labor disappear. They're no more. We have the creation of a second group, actually stored in Oregon, but it's maybe around today, and it is called the American Federation of Labor, AFL for short. And so what's going on with the American Federation of Labor? They agree to only allow skilled workers. And so that's a big thing there. And so if you're unskilled, you're just an immigrant in this country, you're not doing anything that I can't bring anybody off the street, we're not important to us. Only the skilled labor, all right? And because they did that, things got accomplished. Now, the organizer of the AFL is Samuel Gompers. He's kind of down there. We'll get to him in a minute, okay? So, the next thing they decided to do was rather than have everybody talk, because if I sat to you today and I said, everyone tell me what your goal in life is at the same time. Everybody, 1, 2, 3, go. Everyone would yell, and I wouldn't hear anything. And I couldn't hear anything, correct? But if I had one writer, and he went to each of you, and he wrote down what you wanted, and then he brought it to me and goes, okay, Mr. Prince, here's what everybody thinks. I can read that. I can understand it, correct? So you need a spokesman. Now, American Federation of Labor had the spokesman, and it's called collective bargaining. This gentleman here, in our scenario, represents all the workers. He has brought a list of common demands to the bosses, and the bosses are going to listen to it, and they can say yay or no. But by virtue here, you're only talking to one person instead of a whole bunch of people, so you really have to trust this person, and you also have to go and talk to him, because if you don't make your voices heard, much like voting, you really don't have the right to be upset about anything, okay? So that, in essence, is collective bargaining, all right? Now, the other thing of AFL, they focused on what were called bread and butter issues, okay? You can't solve the world's problems. You can only solve the things there that you can control. And so what are bread and butter issues? Bread and butter issues refer to 3 things. Number 1, how long am I going to work? Working hours. Number 2, how much am I getting paid? And number 3, am I going to be safe? Those are bread and butter issues. Outside of that, vacation days, and there's a multitude of things, but those 3 things are bread and butter. How long am I working? How much am I getting paid? And lastly, am I going to be safe? And so that's the idea of the American Federation of Laborers. As I told you a minute ago, Samuel Gompers, here he is the controller, the starter of the AFL. Now, the AFL is still around. They merged with another industrial union called the CIO, but we'll get to that later on, all right? Now we have to move in to the other things. Now, to understand this, I haven't told you this yet, but a union is actually a socialist concept. Now, the difficulty in understanding that is socialism is against everything this country is built on. And so some of these unions could be seen as maybe radical and wanting to take over the world. It's kind of cynical, right? But that's what it is. And so we're going to talk about these more radical unions and then finally what socialism is at its heart, all right? The first radical union we have is called the IWW. They were Industrial Workers of the World. Some weird little thoughts, if you will. They were called the Wobblies for short, and the guy who led them was Big Bill Haywood, and he had one eye. I don't know why I'd want to tell you that, but I'm one of those weird people that kind of fascinates me, because if he only has one eye, maybe his focus is better? I don't know. So Industrial Workers of the World, they are a socialist union, and at their heart, they actually want to upset the entire balance of the government. They want to control the government. They want the government completely gone, and so the workers will decide how things work. That's not in the Constitution, and so that's not going to work. So IWW shuts down there shortly after. Now, it does inspire somebody. This guy. This is Eugene V. Debs, okay? Eugene V. Debs started his own union at this time. It's called the American Railway Union. I would like you to get that, American Railway Union. And so this is also where he is very job specific. You have to work on a railroad to be in his union, okay? Now the other thing he does is he is going to start the Socialist Party of America. Now even though socialism, as I said, is against everything this government stands for, it is allowable by the Constitution to have a party. We have a socialist party. We will have a socialist candidate run for president. He's not going to win, but he can run for president, okay? So what makes socialism so bad? There's a book that you'll read when you go to college, and I say when, and it's by a man named Karl Marx, and so I'd like to get that by socialism. It's Karl Marx, M-A-R-X, all right? It's called the Communist Manifesto, and what socialism basically calls for is a disruption of capitalism, to tear down classes, as they're called. There is no high, middle, low class. Everyone works for everything jointly, and everything is doled out. Now, the only problem is you don't own anything. The house you live in, not yours. Given to you by the government. The food you eat, not yours. That car you drive, not yours. And so that's the idea of socialism. And so people don't like that because what's the point of going to work? And people go to work to buy things, to have nice things, to provide for their family. But if everything is going to be doled out to you, what's the point of working? So socialism comes up. It's a big concept, especially when it turns into a more radical version that's called communism in the Cold War. And we'll get so much more into that later on. Now, the other thing I'd like you to get here, and I kind of left this off, socialism kind of peaks at this point here with a man named Jacob Coxey. Here he is. So go ahead and put him with socialism, Jacob Coxey. It's C-O-K, or no, sorry, C-O-X-E-Y. Jacob Coxey has a March on Washington. Not Dr. King, not A. Philip Randolph. This dude was the first. He marches to Washington to explain his views on socialism. And so what does he get? He gets jail time. As I said, socialism called for a disruption of the order, and people don't like when things are disrupted. Now, the one thing I'd like you to get here is number 3, what limits the effectiveness of the unions? As I said, there were some unions that are kicked out, right? Knights of Labor, AFL. IWW are no more, but the AFL is. So what made the AFL so successful? And go back and listen if you want to again and make that decision. All right. And the last little thing we'll talk about here are the bad parts of unions strikes.